The mighty God, even the Lord, had spoken, and called the earth from the rising of the sun unto the going down thereof. Out of Zion the perfection of beauty, God had signed. Our God shall come and shall not keep silence, a fire shall devour before me, and it shall be very tempestuous round about him. He shall call to the heavens from above, and the earth, that he may judge his people. Gather my saints together unto me, those that have made a covenant with me by sacrifice, and the heavens shall declare his righteousness, for God is judge himself. Selah. The first section deals with the mid-tribulation appearance of Jesus Christ to Israel and the post-tribulation rapture as found in Matthew chapter 24, verse 31, Hebrews chapter 12, verse 14, chapter 9, verse 28, Isaiah chapter 26, verse 20, and Revelation chapter 14, verse 16. From the rising of the sun unto the going down thereof, verse 1, east to west, as in Matthew chapter 24, verse 27. Our God shall come, verse 3. He shall come. This is not a reference to the last judgment at all. It's a reference to the second advent. Note the elements here. First, God speaks in the last days, Hebrews chapter 12, verse 25 and chapter 1, verse 2. Second, he speaks from heaven. Call to the heavens from above, verse 4. Third, he speaks to Israel, not to anyone else. Gather my saints, sacrifice, verse 5. Fourth, they come from the four quarters of the earth, and to the earth, verse 4. See Matthew chapter 24, verse 31. Fifth, they assemble at Zion, when the Lord lands out of Zion, verse 2. See Isaiah chapter 2, verses 1 to 5. Sixth, God himself sits down at the head of the valley of Jehoshaphat as judge, Joel chapter 3, verse 2, on the throne of his glory, Matthew chapter 25, verse 31, and it's his righteousness that appears. The heavens shall declare his righteousness, verse 6. His righteousness, Romans chapter 10, verses 1 to 4, is Jesus Christ. Selah writes smack in the context so no one could miss it, verse 6. Verse 3 is the second advent according to Malachi chapter 4, Matthew chapter 3, verse 12, and 2 Thessalonians chapter 1, verse 8. As to the exact time that this pre-advent appearance takes place, typified by Paul's conversion and the Lord's appearances to Ezekiel and Daniel, no one knows for sure, at least not now. At one time, all the gravestones faced east, verse 1. There is one judgment in heaven, the judgment seat of Christ, and another one on earth, Matthew chapter 25, verse 19. But the nation of Israel is judged on earth in the tribulation. His judgment as a nation is over in Matthew chapter 25, and the judgment of his enemies then takes place. See verses 16 to 23 in this psalm. The heavens that declared the glory of God, Psalm chapter 19, verse 1, will declare the righteousness of God. Inspirationally, we may note with Spurgeon that earth and heaven will both unite in condemning sin, and that the saints are gathered together to Christ by faith before they are gathered together at the rapture. Hear, O my people, and I will speak. O Israel, I will testify against thee. I am God, even thy God. I will not reprove thee for thy sacrifices, or thy burnt offerings, to have been continually before me. I will take no bullock out of thy house, nor he-goats out of thy folds. For every beast of the forest is mine, and the cattle upon 1,000 hills. I know all the fowls of the mountains, and the wild beasts of the field are mine. If I were hungry, I wouldn't tell thee, for the world is mine and the fullness thereof. Will I eat the flesh of bulls, or drink the blood of goats? Offer unto God thanksgiving, and pay thy vows unto the Most High, and call upon me in the day of trouble. I will deliver thee, and thou shalt glorify me. Doctrinally, verse 7 is aimed at Israel. The temple sacrifices are mentioned in verses 8 to 12. In the same tone of voice we find in Isaiah chapter 1, verse 11. God is not pleased with the sacrifices of the wicked. Proverbs chapter 15, verse 8, and chapter 21, verse 3. He says he will not reprove Israel for the sacrifices they brought, verse 8. However, for here, he is admitting that they did bring them and that this was done continually. Later, Isaiah chapter 1, verse 13, he says, stop bringing them. Verses 9 to 11 and are self-explanatory. If I were hungry, verse 12, is sarcasm, although when he becomes incarnate, he stoops to ask his creation for a drink when he is thirsty. John chapter 4, verse 7, chapter 19, verse 28. Paul refers to verse 12 when he talks about Christian conduct in eating things offered to idols. 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 26. Thanksgiving, verse 4, is one of the spiritual offerings of 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 5, and Hebrews chapter 13, verse 15, which see, and call upon me in the day of trouble, verse 15. Doctrinally, this is Daniel's 70th week. Practically, it's as when Jonah says he will pay his vows, Jonah chapter 2, verse 9. Note that deliverance may not come until God gets glory from it. And thou shalt glorify me. Call upon him in the day of sickness, the day of debt, the day of loneliness, the day of war, the day of persecution, and the day of death. If you get real hungry, ask him to go out on the hills and get your steak, for the cattle upon 1,000 hills are his. Verse 10.